The original frame for this faux acrylic stained glass window was freestanding, but I decided I wanted something that actually hung in a window because I want to move into designing stained glass windows to replace whole windows or to go on front of whole windows. So this is a journey into designing a bespoke frame that I can make to any size, but has all the requirements required in terms of longevity. By that I primarily mean filtering out ultraviolet radiation on both sides, front and back, to maximize the longevity of the acrylic-based colors. Welcome to my workshop. It's taken over a year to get this fully kitted out from scratch to a level where I can be quite creative now. Frame moldings invariably come in 3-meter lengths and are painted on the front facing sides. So one of the first things I do, because this is an openable frame, is to paint the backs so that there is no bare wood on the frame. So when it's open, it looks properly finished. Here the painted frame moldings are just laid out to dry before I can proceed to the next step of cutting them down to size. This is my trusty old Morso miter cutter. Now, when dealing with frames, size is really critical. So I have previously created templates for both the horizontal and vertical pieces, and that I use to just size up the Morso so that the pieces I'm cutting will be replicated and be exact size. I have to allow for things like expansion and just being able to fit the thing in the frame in the first place. You don't want it too tight, but expansion is a critical thing as well. Here I'm just tidying up the ends of the cut frame pieces. Often you get little splints which just need to be tidied up. This is a little trick framers often use, and it's to colour the cut part of the frame the same colour as the moulding, so that when the pieces are joined together, the join is invisible even if there is a tiny gap. This part of the framing process is called underpinning, and this is just using V-shaped staples to draw the 45-degree angled pieces of frame together. I'm not using glue in this case because the frame pieces are so small and the staples are relatively very strong that it just avoids the having to clear up any glue overspills. The glue is not really adding to the strength in this particular case. It's more important with big frames, but for little frames I tend not to bother. Because this is an openable frame window, it's in two parts and needs hinges and magnets be very precisely positioned on them so the two parts mirror each other and come together properly. I'm using what are called hidden barrel hinges because these are relatively easy to fit once you've got the hang of them and you've got the hole precisely positioned. To reproducibly achieve this positioning accuracy, I use a locating jig on my CNC routing machine. This ensures that the holes on both sides of the frame will marry up perfectly. Another reason for using the CNC router is that the depths of the holes have to be extremely precise. The hidden barrel hinges go down to within 0.5 millimeter of the depth of the frame, and on the right hand side the depth of the hole has to be exactly the depth of the magnets I'm going to put in. So again, it's not the sort of thing I want to be doing by hand, especially if I'm doing a lot of frames. It's just much more efficient and reliable to do using the CNC router. So here we can see that the holes on both sides are being perfectly cut to the right depth. The holes on the left are for the hidden barrel hinges and the holes on the right are for the magnets. No matter how accurate your frame measurements are and how precise your cutting is, wood being what it is, an organic material where every piece is different, invariably you won't get perfect joints. And what you need to do when you're in this situation is to hide the imperfections rather than reject the frame completely and throw away all that good material. There are techniques to just hide the little blemishes or the little gaps, and it usually involves using the exact same color. It's a kind of putty, painted putty material, and this can be worked into any gaps, and as long as it's the right tone and color, it can then be wiped off and you can be left with seamless filling of tiny gaps. Also with this special frame here, because I've done the underside and I've used staples to hold it together, which is standard. I actually want to hide the staples. The staples would normally appear and would be covered by brown gummed paper at the back of a frame when it's sealed up. But because this is not a sealed frame where you can see both sides of the front and the back of the frame, I want to hide the staples in any tiny gaps in the rear of the frame as well. So just spending a little bit of time to make sure that the back is as neat and tidy as the front. The faux stained glass art puzzle is sandwiched between two sheets of clear 5 millimeters thick. This is to not only obviously create a stable frame sandwich for the puzzle, but also to provide vital UV protection. Clear acrylic is naturally UV protective, filtering out about 99% of UV radiation. And remember, this piece is all about longevity, preserving the colors of the acrylic or acrylic paints in the frame, because this is going to be exposed to sunlight in about the worst conditions possible, so maximum UV protection all around. The clear acrylic sheets on either side of the art puzzle are being glued in with some double-sided non-compressing, it's called structural glass tape. It's non-compressing and it's very, very strong, and we're just now going to just putting the glue into the frame, the glue strips into the frame, and then we'll place the glass or the acrylic glass onto these bonding, very high bonding tapes. The acrylic I use for the frame is recycled wherever I can get it, and it's been cut by a laser machine for accuracy and getting a good edge to it, because this has got to fit in the frame very accurately, and it needs to be produced reproducibly and accurately, and hence laser machine. I don't normally have the laser machine lid open for obvious safety reasons. I've just got it open in this recording so you can see the process. A very precise volume or flow of air is being blown at the laser head to get a smooth cut in the acrylic, and also in the background noise you can hear an extractor fan doing its best to extract the fumes from this process to the outside wall. Obviously with the lid open this is much less efficient, but with the lid closed it does a very good job. Incidentally, the laser cutting process here is being speeded up 8 times, much faster than normal. It's quite a slow process because to get a smooth, polished edge requires a relatively low amount of power on the CO2 laser at a constant speed. You don't want to melt the acrylic behind it. It needs to just be the right speed so that it doesn't join up on itself when it's finished cutting. That beep signals the end of the laser cutting, and now we have some hopefully perfectly cut sheets of perfectly sized clear acrylic. The tape across on both sides is still on. This is to maintain the cleanliness of the acrylic glass, and I keep the tape on until the very last minute to keep it as clean as possible. The 2 sheets of clear acrylic have been laid into the frame, obviously with the tape on the glue side facing removed, and now I'm inserting the hidden barrel hinges into the corresponding pre-drilled holes that were cut on the CNC routing machine. These barrel hinges are very, very precisely positioned in the hole, and the depth is governed by the size, the depth of the hole that was cut, which is exactly the depth of the barrel. So these should fit together perfectly once they're being pushed into place. They have a little screw in them, these hidden barrel hinges, to expand the barrel slightly to give them a tighter grip when they're in the frame. They are excellent hinges and close completely flat. The next step is to glue in the magnets. I use neodymium 52 magnets, circular magnets, and they are super glued into pre-drilled holes of the exact correct depth. It may be overkill, but there are two pairs of magnets, a pair on each side of the frame that hold the frame tightly together. I prefer to have top and bottom magnets rather than just one in the middle, and these magnets are in line with the hinges to give the tightest possible bond. Obviously, the key thing is getting the polarity of the magnets round the right way. With both hinges and all magnets fitted, it's important to just try out the frame, make sure everything aligns properly and works properly. And this is looking just fine. The final pieces of hardware for this special frame are the hooks to hang it with on the top and the little knobs on the side to enable or make it easy to open the frame, or easier to open the frame. Otherwise you'd be struggling. Remember, there's a puzzle inside, and what I don't want is for people to be struggling to open it, and then they could just tip the puzzle out onto the floor or something and damage it. So I've put a couple of little studs on the side to make the opening of the frame a little bit easier. So I'm using a little jig here to line up the holes so that they are accurate and reproducible. Just peeling off the remainder of the tape on the acrylic. The important thing is to keep the glass as clean as possible prior to introducing the puzzle. So here we are. It's just sliding in this pre-cut acrylic puzzle onto one side of the frame. There is a front and a back to the puzzle because it's etched. It's got additional detail in the form of etching lines on the front, and so there is always, it's like a book. I face everything to the front, and the hinge is to the left. And the idea is it looks and behaves like a normal book, opening from left to right. So when you do open it and it's laying flat, the puzzle is on the right-hand side. And then the puzzle in that position can be done like any normal puzzle. But the extra benefit being that it can be closed afterwards and hung on a window and face the sunshine. Here is one finished, sandwiched, faux stained glass acrylic art puzzle in a frame that is UV protective to the maximum. Should last years and years and years in bright sunlight. All that's left to do now is to put some cord, some nylon, clear nylon cord, with some loops so it can be easily hung from the hooks on some sort of window fixing. Obviously, every person has different window fixings, and they may even want to use something like a transparent suction cuppy thing. So there's no hard and fast rules here. Supplied in the box, I'll supply a fixed length of transparent nylon wire with some aluminium ferrules to hold the hoops in place, and these are nearly invisible, but obviously whoever buys this can use their own hanging mechanism. Hence the reason for putting in the hanging hoops in the first place, because that just frees up the buyer or the owner to use whatever hooking mechanism they want. So I've opened up the hooks on the eyes of the hooks so that the hoops can be easily inserted, and Here we are, a finished, free-hanging, openable, magnetized, hinged, faux stained glass window frame. And this is the final product, hanging in a window with maximum UV protection front and rear, with the benefit that it can be easily taken down and opened up, and the puzzle can be solved and can be put back together, closed up by just closing the hinges, and hung back on the window. Should give years and years of UV protection. The acrylic is UV protective, and any future ones I do of this will use pigmented ink, which will be naturally UV protective. So it's as good as stained glass as you can get, I think.